what are you doing to the economy? It appears as things are beginning to look, in terms of the numbers, are beginning to look good. What's happening?
Well, I mean, the point is, if you look at it, several issues have happened. I've always said that the Honorable Dr. Atuforsin, right, started committing to this economy right from the day of his vetting, where he started to send the signals that he was committed to doing the right thing as far as economic stability is concerned. So you would realize that, okay, he made commitment to say, okay, we are going to continue with the domestic debt exchange program, right, which we inherited. So it was a legacy thing that we needed to look at, because the market needs to have confidence to believe that, okay, well, there's a new government, they're going to pay off their loans, among other issues, right, before we can have that level of investor confidence in the economy. Then we talk about IMF programs, among other issues, In the disbursement, we've just had the fourth review, among other issues coming up. There were times, a few years ago, like a year or two ago, we're struggling to access that because we're not meeting certain conditionalities. But for us to have that rapid agreement go through tells you that there's a certain level of confidence in the economy. Now, the currency stability has always been a big issue. We talk about gold board. Yes, I know prior to the gold board, there was gold for oil program, among other issues. But now we have legislated a government entity, right, which is clad in the corporate persona of the gold board. It has a board, right, a functioning board. It has a CEO, and it is being created by law. So what it tells us is that there's more confidence in it. Because any investor looking at this entity, as far as gold trading is concerned, knows. And you know that gold plays an integral role, because you look at the instrument that the central bank is activating to actually have gold-backed currency reserves. And if you look at the numbers in terms of purchases and transactions that have gone, just not through bullion, but through Forex as well, that has been very significant in actually backing this. And I'm sure we are all smiling. Even though I have friends who earn Forex as a salary, and they tell me, look, Sharif, I've had a 30% haircut. I said, well, you were enjoying it a few years ago, and you had a big bonanza in the last 4 to 6 years of it. So if you look at it from this perspective, yes, it's happening. So it's the sustainability of it that we are looking at now. So because we inherited a very overheated economy, and we needed to have these stability levers in place. So you had, and I always say this, most often than not in any functional government within an emerging market, such as ours, you have the central bank governor always at loggerheads with either the executive arm of government or the national treasury, which is the finance ministry. But this time around, you see them all singing from the same hymn book, coordinating efforts, okay? Trying as much as they can to get this done rightly. Right. So what it tells you is that the government has actually, and the goodwill, when we came in, again, the sinking fund was dissipated. We reactivated the sinking fund. Right. So all of these are prudent measures being put in place. We came at a time there was not even financial headroom to do any lending or borrowing or whatsoever within the markets. Today, the market is coming back at us. There was a time we couldn't syndicate cocoa loans. Right. And the syndication of cocoa loans was the easiest to be done. Nobody cracked a sweat to do it. So we are in the stability phase of the government, right? We need to, because an economy needs to cool off before it can make a turning. We haven't cooled off yet. So we are pushing towards the cooling off effect of the economy. And that's where we are having all of this. Again, internal control, as anyone would know, basic, right? Economics or management accounting 101, because you need to have prudent management control to have stability. And President Mahama, in his own wisdom, has actually instituted this, a lean government, cost-cutting measures, among other issues. So a lot has gone into this, right? And you would see that the budget that we saw in March was what I call a stability budget, right? It comes in because in the wake of an overheated economy and given where we were as a country, it now comes in to give some kind of respite and stability. So it allows for, and the progress is being felt, right? Even consumers are feeling it. Right. Business people are cutting down costs to say, okay, well, in solidarity with the goodwill of the government in terms of managing the economy, we would make responses to this. Even though we have an economy where we don't have price mechanisms, you have Passion Air, reducing cost. Yeah. Right. You have other agencies at the pump. Cost is being reduced as fuel across board. So what it tells you invariably is that this is a government that is focused on stabilizing an economy, on cooling off the overheated economy we inherited, to allow us to really turn the corner that we never turned. So we're getting there with all of this. So if you say nothing has been done, then I'm quite surprised. So I always ask, what single policy is it that many want to ask to tell us that, okay, well, do A, B, C, D, and this is what it is. So, but I've given you enormous issues that have come into place. And you could see the trading dashboard is showing a lot as far as gold board is concerned.
Right. Now, before you comment, I think quite clearly you're sticking very closely to a certain fiscal program.
Yes.
And this fiscal program is supposed to, at the end of the day, achieve what you call fiscal consolidation. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that your deficit numbers are looking really good on paper. But you also have a real economy to deliver. You have roads to build, you have schools to build, you have all kinds of things. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's a political economy that you ought to respond to. How are you able to, on one hand, go strictly according to this fiscal program, but then on the other hand, also make sure that you're delivering, because this fiscal programs is only a means to a certain end, isn't it? Okay, so how are you ensuring that the numbers are looking good on paper, but then the people are feeling
exactly what we're doing,
because how are you managing that?
No, the point is, because you have to have, we had a manifesto.
And the reason why I'm asking this, today in fact, it was an announcement that was made yesterday, where the
road minister,
I think it was the president who announced this first, and then the roads minister subsequently did a press conference about the 4 billion CDs, which have now been reduced to road contractors, which I think it's woefully inadequate, isn't it?
Yes.
Given the huge amounts of debts that have been left at the road ministry. So how are you?
No, but that's what I'm saying. This is where you have a good balancing act. Right? We're paying our external debtors through the domestic debt exchange program. Remember, in this country, that blue chip investments, such as pensions, were even touched.
True.
Where you had pensioners picketing at the Princeton's of the finance ministry. So if you have all of this, you are surrounded by an ocean of debt. You have to see how you could manage it prudently, right? So domestic, external. We engage the parish club, among other people. You would realize that when we talk about downgrade and upgrades of ratings agencies, we don't do it ourselves, right? So there's much confidence in what we're doing as a program, both domestic. And when you have a B minus in Fitch terms, what it tells you is that you're able to shoulder X, debts, and when the time comes, you'll be able to pay, you will not default. And that reopens the market to an extent. So we are not saying we are there. Fitch is saying that based on what you're doing prudently, this is what I give you. From a junk status to where we are in 6 months, that tells you that something tremendous is happening. If we had not touched the issue of, I wish we could have given more to the road contractors locally, right? But given the situation and the stability measures we are taking, trying to meet all the stakeholder demands around us, both domestic, external, among other issues, we are getting it to trickle down. And that's exactly what we're doing to have this balancing issue. Because I always believe that when you pay the contractor, you've paid the painter, you've paid the mason, you've paid the carpenter, you've paid all artisans, the steel bender. So that trickled down to the economy. So I'm happy that some disbursement has been made in that light. Sooner or later, we're going to have the media review. And possibly something again would go out to these people whilst we try to. Hopefully, inshallah, next year we're going to have the end of the IMF program. And what we're doing now is to really have a real domestic program. So we're working alongside creating our own domestic measures whilst also, trying to meet the needs of the IMF program and end it prudently.
Do you have? Well, let me put it this way. Do you know why it's had to take us almost 7 months before giving road contractors some money for them to go back to site? Do you know why?
No, when you say do you know why, that's a very...
No,
because
what
if you had asked this question, if you had asked this question probably in our third or fourth year as a government, I may have a different answer. We've just taken over. 6 months old government, with huge debt, mountainous debt to deal with. So it tells you that a lot of issues have to, go in place. We're paying debts, as I said, domestic. If you look at the domestic debt exchange program, the banking cleanup, among other issues, it's massive issues that we need to look at, So I'm not saying, paying contractors 7 months is a good thing or we've done something worthwhile, but we're pleading that, we inherited an overheated economy. We're trying for the economy to cool off. I know that something has gone in, but what I say is we have a mid-year review budget coming soon. And knowing the finance minister for who he is and the president for who both are, as I always touted as the Mahama Opoku Agyeman forcing economy, we are trying as much as possible to, meet these demands of stakeholders and have stability in the first year. So when you see the second year's budget, you'd see how it is aimed at buoying the economy. But even at this, we have big ticket items like the 24-hour economy, the Women's Development Bank, and the big push. And when the big push rolls out, it's a big infrastructure project. So these items are always called mega ministries, depending on what they can do as far as the economy issues are concerned and creating pipelines of investments and progress within the economy. So there's a lot more happening. And the goodwill in and of itself, based on what the government is doing, is the marking scheme that's reflecting internationally.
Okay.
In terms of our image economically and much. Investors are beginning to have confidence, right? They are moving back to the market. When they start to spend within the market, you would see the results. We are making discoveries as far as oil and gas again is concerned. These are all going to be add-ons. You remember in the last 4 or 5 years, the upstream oil and gas market was dead, right? It's been resurrected. When we came, we looked at the Springfield issue, which was one of the bottlenecks that scared away investors. We relooked at it, right? Gave it a human face, unlocked it, and we're beginning to attract new investment to the upstream petroleum sector again. So I'm happy to see all of this happen. You saw the announcement by the Energy Ministry as far as the new discoveries of the wells in the upstream sector is concerned. So the economy is taking back its shape as far as stability is concerned. Once we pass the saturated stability mark, you're going to have real confidence coming through.
And just I'll bring you in. And just 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
Do you have, and the question I asked you earlier was based on, in the last 4 months,
yes,
we have been inundated with calls sometimes on air and off air when we're sitting
about these
calls
contractors,
from contractors with why their monies are being paid and why they won't access. Yeah, exactly. So I needed to explain why it's had to take time for these.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It has to.
So that's what I'm saying. The explanation is good because they're watching.
Yes.
And
those
who do not have the opportunity to call
the
people like you.
The technical issue that most people miss also when it comes to some road contracts are that there's what we call delay on interest payments. Right. So the more you delay not paying, it still accumulates a certain level of interest. Right. So it keeps ballooning till you're able to pay it all off. So it's always a big issue, especially so when a new government inherits a previous government. Okay. So it tells you the build-up of delay on interest payments that would have gone on, interim certificates that has been prepared to be paid. So it's quite an interesting
so basically it's not even in the interest of government to delay it.
Yes, it's not in the interest of government to delay it.
Because it becomes an additional cost.
An additional cost, right? And this could have been a built-up to the last administration that now comes in and ought to also happen.
Finally, my penultimate question. Do you know what accounts for the big difference between the central bank's rate and what is sold on the black market?
Not the black market, the Forex Bureau.
Well, even at the Forex Bureau. Do you know what accounts for that?
No, but I mean, if you want to look at the functionality of this, you see, it's just like you look at loans, right? They have to work up administrative issues, among others, that goes through. The central bank, by law in and of itself, you can't go to a central bank and have these exchanges.
Yes.
But the more the money trickles down and passes through different hands, right, they are trying to make profit, right? And all of it is not really controlled because it's fueled by. I was just having a conversation with an MBA students from Wharton who came around and I had to give them a lecture on these issues. I said, look, I look at the informal market, the black market, right? Not even the Forex Bureau. I look at the black market. I mean, you talk to these guys and the amount of money or dollars they sit with or cities can actually turn things around in the economy. But capturing them within the formal economy becomes a problem. So, I mean, I went to the bank, right? And the bank gives me a rate. I go onto the streets and then I meet these guys to say, okay, what rates do you have? And their rates are like 50p higher than the rate the bank is giving me within the formal sector. Again, which is regulated. Probably I have my own Forex sitting in my Forex account, but if I have to travel and I need, you see the regulation of bringing a passport, bringing a ticket, and you may be able to limit it to an amount of $7,000 or maybe $10,000, depending on what it is. Right? Some people may need more. So it's about comparing what actually happens within the informal market.
Okay.
So when people ask me, where do you look to? I say, I look more to the informal market than the formal market
Right.
to see how we can make adjustments. That is not very controlled. Right. Before I talked about price mechanism, I told you we don't have a price mechanism formula within our economy. So it's just the goodwill of businesses that are doing it. If we did have that, we would have real control over prices. Right. But that is, something that we may probably be looking at in
Because
the future.
what's happening is that...
Because the more it moves to different hands, right, the higher it becomes in terms of rates, because everyone is trying to earn something.
Yeah.
For all you know, the guy even changing the money to you does not own the money.
Yeah.
Because he says that I have a source. You place a phone call. I mean, we've all done this before. You place a phone call and say, oh, I have a friend I don't have, but I have a friend who has.
We call him Abuchi.
Yes. Maybe the friend who has, the money does not even belong to him. So he's also bringing it to you, hoping to make what? 2p per transaction. You get it? So they add something. So it keeps on being a build-up. But when you look at the interbank, I think what you ought to look at is the interbank rates.
The interbank rate.